Hello everyone, hope you're keeping safe, hope you're keeping sane. Look, let's quickly gloss over the fact that I have indeed been missing in action for quite some time now. It may well be over a year. I will make a separate video talking about where I've been, what I've been up to and why I have been absent for so long. But in this video I really want to concentrate on a much more important topic, and that is of course gambling. What I will say is, in my absence, I've noticed that my subscriber count has continued to grow. Now, of course, I want to thank everyone who continues to support the channel and possibly more importantly, continues to support each other through the comment section below my videos. I haven't gone through and read an awful lot of the comments, and personally, to be completely honest with you, a lot of that is through a sense of fear to some extent. When you go absent from this type of channel for so long, people start to speculate, and I don't necessarily want to sit there and read negative things about myself. Now, of course, I know that 99% of you are incredibly supportive, and like I say, you are also supportive to each other, and that's amazing. Of course, the negative side to a continued growth in subscriber count for channels like this is that it goes to show that the gambling epidemic, particularly here in the UK, is not under control. It continues to grow and it continues to be a problem. And that's what I want to talk about today, and that is the reason I wanted to come back and make this video. There is an assumption by a lot of people, and particularly by people who don't gamble or haven't been around gambling, that gambling addiction is fundamentally a financial problem. That if you had enough money, the problem would fix itself. Now, financial problems, there is no doubt, is a symptom or are a symptom of a gambling addiction. However, quite conversely, money can indeed be a catalyst to a gambling addiction. If you starve a gambler of money, it's like starving a fire of oxygen. A gambler with no money cannot gamble. Now, of course, that sounds incredibly simple, but gamblers are devious, manipulative, liars, and in many cases will carry out criminal or certainly immoral acts in order to fund their habits. But the assumption that if you give a gambler enough money to pay off their debts and enable them to facilitate their habit, that the problem goes away. But I will have to tell you now that as someone who has been up here when it comes to earning and down here when it comes to earning, I have been skint throughout every single level. Giving a gambler money merely perpetuates the situation. It will never, ever fix it. So when you get into recovery, when you manage to string together days, weeks, months, hopefully years of not gambling, if you're in debt, maybe you're starting to resolve those debts. Maybe if you're lucky and you got out in time, then you'll actually start to see your bank account grow. You'll maybe start having some savings, for the first time in your life, or certainly the first time in a number of years. But in the same way that they say that the devil makes work for idle hands, I would dare say that for gamblers, the devil makes work for idle cash. If you have money available to you, it may only be a matter of time before you think that using a little bit, a small proportion of the money that you've saved through not gambling, to indulge a little bit in maybe a casual bet or a small go on a fruit machine or whatever, can't do any harm. After all, it is only a small proportion of the money that you've saved. Now, as someone who, prior to making this channel, and actually shortly after making this channel, had lapsed and relapsed multiple times throughout my adult life, I can assure you that any small bet you make, any small amount that you gamble, will probably be the start of a slippery slope. Even if you manage to maintain a sort of small stake or a casual gambling motif for a length of time, eventually the stakes will be increased, the frequency with which you are gambling and the sums of money with which you are gambling will increase until you're back to square one. And from my own personal experience, although this may differ from others, you will generally find that for every lapse and every relapse you have, your habit actually becomes more and more severe each and every time. So how do we solve this? Now, one thing we always talk about when it comes to getting into recovery is restricting your access to money. I've spoken before about handing over access to your accounts to a loved one or to someone that you trust, and only allowing them to give you money for basically legitimate expenses. Now, this can feel a bit nannying, it can feel a bit belittling, like you're getting pocket money, right? But in the early stages particularly, this will help protect yourself against gambling urges. We all know about the triangle. And one side of that triangle is money. If you don't have money, certainly in the short term until you get some, you simply cannot gamble. But as a long-term solution, whilst I recommend keeping this in place for as long as is pragmatically possible, there will come a time, fingers crossed, that you've been in recovery, you've got your life a bit more on an even keel, and you are starting to build up a pot of savings. Okay, so as I say, the devil makes work for idle money. And what you'll need to do is you'll need to find something in your life that you would rather do with that money, or you'd rather use that money for, or you'd rather invest that money in, or you'd rather put that money towards. Now, dare I say, it does not matter what that is, providing it's not harmful, dangerous, or illegal, of course. We've seen it before with, addictive behaviours. We've seen people who can't sit on a bus, sit on a train, sit alone in a pub without picking up their phone and either playing a game or scrolling through social media. We have become addicted to instant dopamine hits, and for gamblers, that go-to dopamine hit were to alleviate the boredom that we have become so bad at dealing with in modern society. The go-to is, of course, gambling. So what you need is something in place to take away that trigger, something that you go to instead of gambling when you're a bit bored. Now, in an absolutely ideal world, of course, this would be some sort of practical, constructive hobby. It would be exercise, it would be going to the gym, it would be training for something, it would be building a business, it would be reading and studying and doing all these great, constructive, productive things. All right? But in reality, dare I say that almost anything is better than gambling when it comes to finding something to do with your time and, in this instance, with your money. All right. If you start collecting whatever, all right, if you start spending it on renovating a car, renovating a house, doing up your garden, buying video games, it doesn't matter. You need to find something better to spend your money on. You need to find something that you can use that for that may not be super constructive. All right. And like I say, in an ideal world, you'd be using it to invest. You'd be using it to build something better for the future. But if you can stop yourself from spending it on gambling, then you're taking away one of the triggers to going back into old routines. And then maybe in due course, you can find something more constructive. You can find something more productive to spend that money on. But in the short term, it is literally finding something that you would prefer to use that money for than to simply alleviate your boredom by placating your addiction. I don't know how well I put that because it's been a long time since I made one of these videos, so apologies if it was a bit rambly. I hope the point came across. I've written a few notes for a few other videos I want to make, so I will of course be doing those in due course. And like I say, I would also be making a video to explain my absence, where I've been, etc, etc. But I didn't really want to come back and bore you with that because I know I've done that previously. But what I do want to say again is a big thank you to everyone who's stuck with the channel. Even the few people who have stuck with the Patreon, so thank you ever so much to you guys. Thank you to everyone who's commented, liked, subscribed, and most importantly possibly everyone who's continued to support each other in the comment section of my videos when I've not been here to do just that. Alright, but until next time, speak to you all soon, have a great weekend, and yeah, stay safe and sane. Cheers guys.